The Van Cave. Welcome, gentlemen. And as soon as everything turns on and starts recording, Cliff's going to shut up after he just said 50 really funny things in a row.
What? Hey man, that's my thing.
Yeah. I've been busy setting up. I'm the only one that hadn't opened a beer yet.
Oh, you're sucking hind tit.
There we go. Yeah, happens a lot.
You call that a beer?
That's
Oh, Frio?
after the tamales.
It's worse than Coors.
After the tamales, it's either this or water, and this is the closest thing to water. So, yeah, the pre-podcast
like water.
snack was some pretty badass tamales
From HEB.
from HEB, no less.
So we got that corporate plug in now. You're gonna get a check.
Yeah, they're gonna owe me money.
Blammo. Okay.
Either that or they'll sue you for
I'm just waiting for that, man.
They were delicious.
Yeah.
Send me money.
The funny thing about all this podcasting stuff, I don't plan to take off. This is, kind of more just a project for my friends and family. But somebody told me when you go over and edit and look at your videos, imagine if you suddenly had 1 million followers. Do you really want that shit out there? The stuff you'd said. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to get sued based on some of the stuff. What's really crazy is I've never noticed how much I misspeak facts. Just quick things. In our last or another episode, we were talking about the FLDS, the Fundamentalist Mormon deal, and Bill was there for that. I got the names wrong. Like, I could remember the Jessups, and I could not think of Warren Jeffs. And so I've have to type. So everybody, when you watch these and you go, that idiot doesn't know what he's talking about, check the annotations to the video. They're down in the bottom because I've had to fix everything that I've said.
Matt, I think almost anybody misspeaks facts from time to time, especially if they have not prepared. If they're just speaking off the cuff or just randomly in a conversation, especially after 1 or 2 pints of Guinness, I think a lot of things get misspoken. It's not malicious. It just happens.
It does. And by the way, that fantastic voice on my left is Bill Martin, longtime buddy. I'm glad to finally get him in here. Welcome to your first episode of many. I shot an interview for Bill. He was had to do a video interview for a volunteer project, and we came in here and shot it with a lav mic and a camera. And I told Bill, I said, dude, you ought to be narrating Louis L'Amour with that voice. So today we're gonna talk about Guadalupe Mountains and first of many series. It's a very special place to me. And Bill and Cliff and I all met in the Civil Air Patrol. Civil Air Patrol keeps coming up, man, every time we have an episode. So we're gonna figure out how to do an episode on that.
Yep.
I don't know. But
you don't have enough mics for that.
Yeah, suffice it to say at this point, if you look it up, Civil Air Patrol is an auxiliary of the U.S. Air Force. It's been around since World War II. And in our end of it, when we were doing it, it centered around air search and rescue. And they had a cadet program, which I was a punk kid in the cadets. And we did a lot of training in the Guads, and that's how we went out there with Bill. And today, of all this stuff that has happened in the Guads, I kind of want to just do sort of a general overview of what started each of us going to the Guads. For somebody new who's never been there, before we get really into the lost airplanes and all that stuff out there, because those are just totally separate episodes, I think anyway. Along the lines of what you were talking about on misspeaking, and we've mentioned this before. There's a new, great irony, I can't remember it, new theory out there that because of the digital age and how much information we can take in and how little we can process and retain, that our drives are full. Like, we just can't take any more information. If you think about how much you see and watch, how many movies you watch, how many articles you read online, you just can't contain it.
My brain is full.
Yeah, see, there we go. Which would lead one to misspeak quite a bit. So,
and the funny thing along that line, I have read, and I've had it confirmed by a neurologist, that everything you ever did or said or saw is stored in your brain.
You just got to find it, right?
I have a difficult time comprehending that, but I've read that on several different articles, and I did broach the subject to a neurologist that I know, and he said, "That's right."
Well, just in here, we'll shoot an episode, and Cliff will tell a story where I was there, and I don't remember it. And that, I think it's happened to all of us a little bit in here.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
So, Guadalupe Mountains, amazing place, Guadalupe Mountains National Park, and I'm amazed to find out how many people live in this area, don't even know about it, or have never been there. When was your first trip there, Bill? Do you remember?
I remember the trip. I cannot remember the exact time frame. A friend of mine at church, he was a youth director, and I was involved with the youth program at that time. And we either wanted to just take a weekend trip, just he and I, or do something, or maybe he even mentioned it, the Guadalupe Mountains. I didn't know anything about it and had never been there. And he talked about the fall colors. So apparently he had been there several times, and we just loaded up. It probably had to have been around 1980.
Right on.
And went over there and rolled in. It was dark when we got there. Set up camp in a little area. Pitched a tent, slept. Got up the next morning. I was surrounded by mountains.
Were you in the park?
We were in the park. We were at the campground,
Pine Springs,
which is, back then, it was very, very nice. It was primitive. It has been, I think, damaged by their visitor center. A personal opinion.
Yeah.
Just a lot of restrictions. Now, I understand that restrictions in a national park are necessary.
Well, I've never seen it before the visitor center, because my first trip was in 1987, and kind of sort of not in the park. We did an exercise, and this was Civil Air Patrol days, and there were plane crashes all over the Guadalupe Mountains, old ones, and we used them for training, and we used one of them. We hiked to one of them from the Ligon Ranch in 1987. I looked up the newspaper article in that today, and that was my first trip. Of course, we started on the ranch, and then it goes into the park, and then back out of the ranch, and that was it. And then what was yours?
The first time I went up there was with Bill. It would have been early 80s. I don't remember the exact date. I remember but like you're saying though, the campground was completely different.
Yeah.
Where you could drive, basically back your car right into the campsite.
Right.
And we went up there. We didn't. We just day hiked. We went up. We went up Bear Canyon. We stayed there in the campground for the weekend. But that Saturday we went up Bear Canyon. And then went over to Hunter Peak or Pine Top, and then came back down that Pine Top Trail.
Now that was at the time when, we were already in Cap. Yeah, we met in Cap. That's right.
Right.
Because Jimmy Kirkpatrick
he
passed us on that ladder, which is what Bear Canyon Trail is like, carrying a pack full of rocks.
Well, I don't know that it was full of rocks, but there was at least one rock in it because he showed it to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was there with a different group, and they were
correct.
They were hiking from Pine Springs over to McKittrick Canyon, and they had parked a car over at McKittrick Canyon.
That's
so
right.
they could
I remember
get back.
that now.
And so the only day that we saw him was there up at the top of Bear Canyon, and he was wearing his giant pack full of stuff and it went up that canyon. Going up Bear Canyon almost killed me and Bill both, and we were up there in the top, sitting in the shade, trying to sort ourselves out. And Jimmy comes walking up like he just walked down the street. I mean, he didn't look like he was even breaking a sweat.
I remember being on just dying going up Guadalupe Peak, a trip with you when I was a kid, and that guy that was like wearing his little 80s bikini runner shorts and just came running by the whole group. And
that was up near that bridge, which is like about a mile from the peak, and about 4.5 miles or something from the parking lot, and it's up, not 3,000 feet, but
I believe it's 2,800, 25, somewhere.
It's a ways up
from the
parking lot,
there,
and so we were trudging up that trail like the Baton Death March, like we were about to die.
That was my first trip up the peak too.
And this guy wearing a pair of shorts and a pair of tennis shoes and carrying a water bottle in each hand passed us at a dead run up that trail, and we were just like, that guy's a jerk.
They used to have Friday or Saturday night campfires with a ranger, and I was there one weekend, and I believe I was by myself. I don't remember either of you guys or anyone else being there with me, but we got to talking about a lot of things, and the ranger brought up that trail, and he said the record up and down was 45 minutes.
Wow.
The guy said, well, I would have been down a little quicker, but I stopped at the top to eat a sandwich. And he was a marathon runner.
Oh, yeah. What we're talking about, the Guadalupe Peak itself, which is the highest point in Texas. What's the number?
8,740. I've seen 49 and 48, so it's somewhere in that area there.
And most people, I think, go to climb the peak, go up and go down, which is an all-day affair. I've seen most people, I think, about 8 hours round trip, give or take.
Yeah.
And you go up and you sign in, and you go up to the top and you sign the little book at the top, and which is, I actually on one trip photographed that entire book because some of it was so funny. I remember, all these people. One kid drew headstones with him and all of his friends' names on it when they got up there. And
he was not having a good time.
Yeah, they were not. Well, the first time I went with Cliff was in Civil Air Patrol, it was among Civil Air Patrol activities. I don't remember what the deal was, but
we just planned a trip up there one weekend. And so to go up to the peak and.
And I was miserable. I mean, I hated everything about it because it's like climbing stairs all day.
That's the way that Bear Canyon Trail was. It's
Bear Canyon, it's worse.
Now, I think it's closed now. I don't think that you can do it.
I think I hadn't been there in a couple of years, but it was open. But I just went down it. I didn't go up it. So
it's been about 15 or 20 since I was in that campground area. Well, the last time was when you and I were there. I think you and I have been there a couple of times, haven't we?
What are we
talking about? To the campground?
Yeah.
Stayed in the campground?
Yeah.
Because one of those times, I don't think we did the Bear Canyon Trail, but that's when we saw that wolf.
Oh, cool.
We didn't know what it was at first. I thought, there's no wolf in here. But it wasn't a German Shepherd. It was big. And it was years later when I saw at the Carlsbad, there's a kind of a zoo museum there in Carlsbad, New Mexico. Yeah. And they had a cage and had 3 wolf in it, Mexican wolf. And I looked at that and I said, that's what Cliff and I saw.
Yeah. And then me and Matt went up there and saw a bear.
Yeah, we saw a bear.
Up near Bush.
It was right by Bush Mountain. Yeah.
And which is funny because I took a bunch of pictures of it, and we came down and went to the visitor center and walked in the door, and Matt's like, tells the ranger, we saw a bear up there, and the ranger's like, yeah, I'm sure you did. Whatever, bro. And and so we went home, and he took one of the pictures that I had taken, and he posted it to the Guadalupe Mountains National Park Facebook page, and all of a sudden, we were taken much more seriously about the bear.
Well, and there was a conversation about that bear because the way it started is I asked what kind of bears were up there, and they were like, well, maybe a black bear. And I described the bear we saw, which was
about the color of this table.
Yeah, it was a really light colored bear, and I'm pretty sure I have the picture, and I'll put it up right here. Poof. If not, I would just lied to you. But
I bet I got a picture.
Yeah, they they're like, no, there aren't any bears that color. And then I find out that there's an entire
It's a
rainbow
cinnamon
colors
bear.
of they call them cinnamon bears, but they're just a
It's
black bear.
It's a black bear,
Yeah.
but they come in a variety of colors. They're not all solid black.
The craziest thing up there are the mule deer, because they have no fear of anything. And I remember the way Cliff explains it, you can rattle a wrapper and a deer will look over your shoulder like, hey, you gonna eat that, man?
So
Food.
yeah, so me and another guy, friend of mine, Mark, went up there, and we went up and camped up actually in the bowl up there at that. I think it was Tejas campsite or something. Anyway, I have to look it up. And so we're sitting up there, and you can hear like these behind you. You hear this footsteps crunching the leaves, right? And you're sitting there, you got your eyes closed, and kind of taking a break, and you're thinking, that's probably a deer. Now, I'm not going to look. But more crunches, get a little closer and a little closer, and there's always that picture in the very back of your head, like somebody's fixing to sneak up on you and split, split your head with an axe or whatever. So you have to look. It's right. You can't not look. I mean, so you would jerk your head around and look, and the stupid deer would be standing there looking at you like, so you got any food or anything? and you'd throw a rock at it or something. It'd run off. And then you'd kind of close your eyes again, and you'd hear these footsteps coming. And this went on for hours. I mean, it's like they don't give up.
No.
They're like pests.
You can scare them off, and they'll come right back.
Oh, yeah.
I soloed up to Bush Mountain one time, and I didn't see a person after I left Pine Top. I didn't see anybody else. And as soon as I got there were about, 5-6 deer and a little herd, and they were just sort of drifting across. They were eating the tips off the off the juniper, like the fresh tips that they'd put out. And they just sort of meandered across the campsite, and I've got pictures of them just right there by my tent. They didn't care that I was there. And the ones in the park near the campsites will come up and expect to be fed, even though you're not supposed to feed them. I'm sure people do, but
there's a fair size population or herd of elk. I don't think that they have gotten that friendly, because the elk can be hunted in that area now. Not in the park, but about 20 or 25 years ago, elk was taken off the Texas Parks and Wildlife list of native species in Texas. They're not native, they're introduced. So they said, we don't regulate them anymore. And the park was a little upset with that, especially since very shortly after that, one of their large bull elks was killed.
Oh, wow.
But that's the way it is. It's not a native species to Texas, so the Texas does not regulate them.
Well, they issue the hunting permits up at Lincoln, right? Isn't that where you can hunt? Is up in Lincoln National Forest around there? Yeah.
But see, there's private property around there too, and it was a private, like the Ligon Ranch.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I had a park ranger up there on one trip. I went up there. We talked to a park ranger, and he was made the comment about how their deer population triples just about the time deer season starts.
They know where to go.
He said he said the deer will like drop down out of Lincoln National Forest into the national park because they don't get hunted there, so they kind of get pushed down.
Yeah, I would imagine the pressure changes. I've never hunted up there, but I've heard it just gets crowded and kind of busy all of a sudden when people show up to hunt.
Well, me and Bill were up there at Lincoln National Park or National Forest one time during hunting season. You remember that during bow season?
Yes.
And this white pickup drove past our campsite. There was a guy riding in the back of it wearing camouflage, carrying a bow and arrow, and we were just like, I'm not sure that's going to work for you. I think you're missing a little something here on the camouflage thing. But
there's some people out there that are hunting that should not be
right
in public by themselves.
I know some elk hunters that go up there, and it sounds kind of like a free-for-all to me. That not much like what we've experienced in Texas, where you get your license and you just drive up into Lincoln National Forest and get out of your truck and chase stuff. I guess that's how it is.
So, I've been up I don't think either of you have been to one of my favorite camping spots up there. When you drive through Queen, and I do not remember the road numbers, near the end of it, there is a road that goes to the right, to the left, which is basically south. I believe it's called Guadalupe Ridge Road or Guadalupe Rim Road. It's a very, very well improved gravel highway road. I've driven it 40, 50 miles an hour for about 10 or 12 miles, and it comes to an end, and you turn off on a little side trail and end up at an area that overlooks a canyon that I cannot remember the name of now. But I've been in there in October during black powder season and gun season, and I've run into a few people. There are not a lot of deer in that area. You've got to hunt that area hard to get your mule deer in that area. It's just there just aren't very many there.
Muleys are weird anyway. That's just kind of weird. Well, I've noticed. You were talking about the primitive camping and all that. That's kind of most of the people you see there are hikers, because there's no RV hookups. They have RV spaces, but
where is that?
At
Guadalupe Pine Springs campground.
Yeah.
They've got the spaces for RVs, but they don't have hookups. There's no generators.
Yeah.
It's tent camping. There's little bathrooms there, and then the visitor center. And I've seen people just come to the visitor center and leave on their way, and you don't run into a lot of weirdness. It's a pretty quiet place.
Now the last time I was there, RVs could run a generator, but it must be turned off at 10 o'clock in the evening.
That's what they.
And I have seen very close to what you're saying there. I've seen a lot of foreign people there.
Oh yeah.
You'll hear German spoken. I don't remember French, but some of those languages, you'll see those people there, and they're all very nice, and they will most likely speak English too.
So, Bill, you remember that night we went up there one weekend, and that night the storm blew in and the wind blew. Well, the ranger told us the next day the wind blew off the scale on their wind meter or whatever they had there. Yeah. And the next morning, that campground looked like a refugee camp.
There was stuff scattered everywhere because people went to bed that night.
Yeah,
and there was not it was not like a thunderstorm. There was no rain.
Just a straight wind.
It was dry. It was just the winds of the Guadalupe Mountains.
Yeah.
And you're right, Cliff. There was furniture and stuff scattered. People out there wandering around picking stuff up.
Yeah, broken tent poles, and the whole place was a mess.
We didn't even try to set up a tent.
Yeah, it
was so strong because we got there well after dark.
Right.
I think we left here after work.
Yeah, and so we put some our mattresses down and our sleeping bags, and we're just sleeping on the ground.
Yeah,
and I remember 2 or 3 times during the night, the wind blew hard enough that it blew me off of my mattress.
Nice.
So and I had to scooch back around and get back on it. And, I got it the next morning, and it looked like a bomb had gone off in that campground.
Yeah. Well, I remember being blown down with you when we came down from our Arctic expedition up there. We came back down, that trail that joins up with Smith Springs, the Foothills Trail.
Well, we came down Bear Canyon, and we were almost back to Pine Springs, and this gust of wind hit, and I was wearing that big old backpack, and I mean that wind hit me broadside and put me on my ass. Boy.
Blew us both down. Yeah.
Now, I have been there when there was rain. I went up there one week, and I was by myself at the campground. And you remember that little tent I had, that little tech sport or something like that? Well, that tent, as most tents do, has a waterproof kind of a skirt. The very bottom of it is waterproofed. And I heard the rain start during the night. Oh, it was good sleeping. My God, that's good sleeping in a tent when it's raining. Thunder, lightning, the traditional. Well, something woke me up in the morning, this weird sound. And I poked my head out of my tent, and there was a raging river that wasn't there the night before, the evening before, and there was 4 inches of water around my tent. That skirt was up. My tent was up like a bathtub almost.
Wow!
Literally, I stepped out into 4 inches of water.
Wow!
It washed out one of the roads. Fortunately, there was a second road we could get out of, but and this was in one night.
Was that the park you said?
At the campground.
Wow.
At Pine Springs
the
campground. Yes, sir.
Wow. I went up there. I was by myself again, and I went up and spent the night. And it rained, and it didn't seem like much of a rain to me. And it was, like you said, just kind of nice here in the tent. And I had just bought I think it was when I had that bivvy shelter, the expensive bivvy shelter I tried out. It was nice. Came hiking down, and the Pine Springs, the creek was running. And I had never seen that. It was about 3 inches deep and probably 50 yards wide. It seemed like it was just this big,
Pine
big
Springs
wide.
Creek that I could see, and it wasn't 3 inches deep.
No, this was
like 6 feet deep.
Yeah, that's all this came across. But it was really wide and running. It wasn't there before. Really pretty, but I had a good time there. And
I've had some very good times there, guys.
I've been rained on a bunch there. And we've been snowed on, haven't we, Cliff?
Oh man!
Yeah, you guys were real lucky on that. I didn't get to partake of that pleasure.
That was a cool trip. That was a January.
When he says cool, he means really,
real cool.
As in cold.
Yeah.
There's a difference in cool trip and a cold trip.
When we hit the trail at the trailhead, we were both wearing T-shirts, and Matt debated with me about whether he should bring his coat or not. Should I bring my coat? And I was like,
my parka. I had a coat.
Yeah, and I was like, yeah, you should probably bring the coat, because when we stop hiking and sit down, it's gonna get cold. What we didn't know until we got up into the backcountry was the snow was 2 feet deep, more or less, up there in the backcountry.
There were drifts that were deeper than that.
Yeah, I stepped off in a couple of holes that went up to my knees. But.
Yeah, it was down to 20 degrees that night. I remember that, and that's the first time I'd ever pitched a tent just in snow.
Yeah,
that was too deep to get to the ground.
Yeah,
in your with the stakes. So we got pretty creative. I remember that.
I did that in my backyard one time. I had a new sleeping bag. I believe it was a 10-degree bag. It was in the winter, and I wanted to test it out. We had about 10 or 12 inches of snow on the ground. This is when I lived over on Wilshire or wherever. I pitched my tent in the backyard and slept that night. I had 2 sleeping bags, and I got cold during the night, and it was not 10 degrees. So I stuffed one bag inside of the other. And I slept warm then. But, hey, what better place to, if I got really bad off, just go inside.
Yep.
But just to test it out to see what temperature it was good to. So, yes, I can say I pitched a tent in the snow.
So I will say this. When we first ran into some snow going up there, I don't know about Matt, but I was thinking to myself, hey, this is pretty neat. I've never hiked in the snow before, and West Texas, this is kind of a novelty. Well, let me tell you, after walking in the snow for about 8 miles, the novelty wears off.
We were done with it. We were absolutely done with it.
By the time we got out of the snow, I had all of the hiking in the snow I ever wanted to do in my life.
I was that way about cross-country skiing. I thought, man, this looks good. This looks like fun.
Yeah.
About the first 100 yards, it's fun. And after that, it is work.
Well, that was just it. And one of the game changers for us was there had been a couple of groups in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
And we could see the trails, because if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't have known where to go.
And I'm still not 100% sure we pitched our tents on a campsite.
Yeah, we were as close as we could get.
Did anybody argue with you?
No, there was no. Well, there was some other guys up there and from El Paso.
Yeah,
and we pitched a tent like in the general area they were in because we thought, well, maybe they know where the campground is. I don't know.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. But it got cold. When you look across the scene, you see the beautiful snow-capped mountains, and you hike up to the snow-cap. It sucks up there. That's what we can tell you.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Have either of you ever been there during fall colors?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good time.
I think Cliff and I were there one time when we drove. That's right. We went up to that campground that I was telling you about earlier. So you've been there. And then we drove that road where we ran into that bunch of yahoos in a Suburban.
Yeah. We went down this
too much alcohol.
We went down this 4-wheel drive road in Bill's Blazer, and it
4-wheel drive Blazer.
Yeah, 4-wheel. It got bad.
Yeah,
I mean, it got real bad. We stopped and had to dig it out twice.
Yes, sir.
But the running boards were up at a 45-degree angle from beating them against rocks. Yeah. It was bad, and we were almost out. And we ran in. Here comes another vehicle. You go, wow, there's another vehicle coming up this road, you know. And we pull up beside these guys heading the other way, and it was like 4 or 5 guys in a 4-wheel drive Suburban. All of them had a beer in their hand, and all the windows are down, and the driver goes, "Does it get any worse up ahead?" And we both go, "Yes."
I thought he asked does it get better up there.
Anyway,
either way,
me and Bill are going, turn around. You can't make it.
Yeah, you don't want to be here.
Don't go. And they go, all right, see ya.
Anyway.
And they drove off. We said, okay, well, good luck, fellas.
We never read the newspaper or anything that they had died up there and found months later. But
I'm sure they had an excellent adventure.
Well, we had talked about this.
I hope they had fun. I do.
We had talked about this before. My wife and I went up there on our honeymoon trip. We went a bunch of places, but we stopped and went up to the peak and came back. That's where my wife discovered she was not a fan of heights, and hit me, brother. And we went up and came back, and there was a guy a man with his father, and I think the dad was 80 years old, somewhere in there, and they went up to the top and they came back down, and it was slow. But they did it and had a great time. But Cliff and I went up. We were talking about it one day that we had always gone up to the Guadalupe Peak and come back on the same day, and we had never spent the night at the campsite up top. So we decided, hey, let's give it a shot. So we went, and it was windy. It's not as pretty as the other places in the park, but in my opinion. It's the peak trail's not near as pretty as going up around Pine Top in the Bowl. And we sat up there and pitched a camp, drank some whiskey, hung out. We came back down, and it was really neat getting up fresh and ready to go and just going downhill in a day. And, that's all you got to do. And we started meeting the hikers coming up. And that's where, like you were saying, we met people from foreign countries and everything else. And we came across this lady. She was moving really slow, and she
was with the whole family.
Yeah. It was a lady with her family. And she said, is that the peak right there? And we're like, nope.
Yeah, they were like maybe 45 minutes from the parking lot. So
yeah,
they had a long way
to go. And what was the deal? She had you remember a little better than I do, I think.
Oh, she had some
knee surgery. I remember that.
Some medical issue, some knee surgery or something, whatever. I think they were from someplace in West Texas, like Pecos or Monahans or someplace like that.
Yeah.
Anyway, she was telling us, she was talking to me and Matt, and she was telling us, that she had these medical issues, and that she had promised herself that when she got, going again, she got in shape, that she was going to climb Guadalupe Peak. And so she was up there to climb Guadalupe Peak, and her whole family was there supporting her. It was really nice. I mean, it was. They were all there going up with her, and so me and Matt are telling her, well, you can do it. You can make it. You just got to hang in there, and it's really pretty up there, and blah blah blah. We're telling her all this stuff. We're being very supportive, And and then we go, okay, well, we're heading on down now. So we go on down. We get, 100 yards down the trail out of
You
earshot.
think she's dead already?
We're out of earshot. We get far enough away from him. Matt looks at me and goes, "She ain't gonna make it." And I'm like, "Yeah, she's not gonna make it. She's not even gonna get anywhere near the peak." I mean, it looks and sounds way easier than it is.
It's just a hard, steep climb.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Yeah.
The trail is pretty good. You're not busting trail. It's not really loaded with scree or loose rock. It's just a hard uphill climb.
Yeah.
Now, do you remember that same trip that you and I went up Bear Canyon Trail and came down Tejas Trail? We were about halfway down and came on that couple.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
In tennis shoes.
Well, they were lost, I think.
I don't remember them being lost. They may have been.
Well, because the part that was that part of that closed trail that we found them on.
That's right.
Now, when I say they were lost, I have no doubts they could have found. Well, I have no doubts they could have found their way back.
Oh, sure.
There's no place else to go. I mean, you go downhill, you're going to wind up at the parking lot no matter how you do it. Yeah. But they had, and the reason, there's a part of that, there's an old part of Tejas Trail that is closed because they rerouted it. And me and Bill were coming down, and we got to that intersection where the closed part goes down and the new part goes this way. And we were debating, which way to go. And we noticed that this couple was in front of us. We saw them down there on the closed part. So being good Samaritans that we are, we decided that we would go that way, the same way they did, in case they got into trouble.
Right on.
Because they didn't really look like they were switched on. You know what I'm saying? So you're like, yeah, we should go this way. So we went down that way following them intentionally. And it wasn't too long that we caught up with them. And when we caught up with them, they were sitting on a couple of rocks on the side of the trail, and it was a man and a woman. And the woman, they both looked beat, completely and utterly defeated, okay? And the lady was just sitting there like sobbing quietly.
She had been crying.
And so we walked up, hey, how y'all doing? Hey, we're okay,
Yeah.
Then kind of that voice like, I'm not okay. And we gave them some water.
Right, we asked them if they had water, and I don't think they had any at that time.
I think at that point they were out.
And they were out of water, and
we gave
them
a canteen.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, so
and she drank that water pretty quick.
Yeah, I think we wound up giving them a whole canteen or a whole bottle of water and left it with them. And we went on down ahead of them, but when we got off the trail, we watched to make sure that they got off behind us. And they did, and that was probably maybe their last hiking trip.
Unfortunately, it could have been.
Either that or they decided to get a little better prepared next time.
And they weren't German.
No.
Here's where the Guadalupe Mountains will eat your lunch. If you look at the map, and you look at a top view map, and something might be a mile away, but you might have to climb 2,600 feet in that mile, like Bear Canyon. Bear Canyon's right at a mile,
right,
and you go straight up.
And you gain about 3,000 feet.
26 and change.
Feels like 10,000.
Yeah,
yeah.
And this is climbing stairs all day in a hot, dry desert climate. And there is no water up there. There is zero water anywhere except at the campground. So whatever you have. And I looked over some notes before I came one of my hiking trips. I had 2 1-liter bottles, and I had a 6-liter bladder in my pack, and that's for a solo out and back trip. So in the summer. Well, what's amazing about that park and from here is I can leave. So you can, say you want to do a weekend, and you can leave on Saturday morning at early, 6 o'clock, count the hour back for changing the time zone because it is a different zone, and walk in when they open it at 8 o'clock and be up in the high country by noon. And once you're up there, it's all nice and cool. And so you really only suffer when you come back down. If you wake up and mess around, you come down when it's hot. That's what's really cool about it. It's how you can get a good trip out in the summer.
Yeah.
That's something I've learned about trips like that. Now, I've done only one true backpacking trip, and that's the time you and I went up McKittrick Trail, way, 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 way up. But I backpacked overnight several times in Big Bend, and I will usually take in 4 liters of water, knowing that I have about 50% more than I calculate I'm going to need for cooking, drinking, whatever. Of course, when you cook something in water, if there's any water left over, you drink it. So the next morning when we start to come back out, I'll pour out half the water I have left.
Yeah.
And I have plenty of water to get back to the vehicles, back to the trailhead. But I always have a surplus of water going in. You don't know what's going to happen.
My last solo summer trip, I can tell you from coming down from Pine Top, my last 2 liters I've wound up pouring over my head. It was so hot there. But one of the things that really changed the game, the hiking game for me, and Cliff and I talked about this earlier, but we were going down there in Civil Air Patrol. We had military issued gear. We had, Alice packs and the, LC1, LC2 packs and stuff like that.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
Well, it was free, which made it a fantastic deal. And it's rugged gear, but you got to stop and think about what that's made for.
Yeah.
That's made for an 18-year-old back. And when he does his 4 years, it's made to go on the next 18-year-old back. So,
and one size fits all.
And so I got to thinking about it. I told Cliff, we were probably drinking beer at Murray's, and I said, man, got money and I want to do some of this stuff. I think I'm going to get into ultralight. Now, I haven't gotten so ultralight that I'm the guy that trims off the margins of the map or cuts off the extra ends of my shoelaces.
Cuts the handle off your toothbrush.
Well, I did. I was messing with Cliff about it. I got almost like 3 packs of toothbrushes. And I cut them off short, and I drill lightning holes in them. I gave him one just, as a joke. So I did get a titanium spoon, though, just so I could say I have a titanium spoon.
Did you get a spork?
It's titanium spork. Yes, sir.
Okay.
With the little...
what a spork... Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, the little snow peak.
I've eaten at Kentucky Fried Chicken before.
Yeah.
I know what a spork is.
It's got the little comes with a little snow peak cooking pot and all like that, and it's really cool. But that was a game changer for me because like you said, I'm buying gear that's made for a person my size. That's way more customizable. It's a little more tender, a little more fragile, but it sure is nice to go up there. I found a sleeping system with a 40-degree bag and a little bivvy shelter. Cost a lot of money, but it's like less than 2 pounds. So I mean that makes a big difference when you're getting up there trying not to just die when you.
So you get all your food and your gear, your clothes and your boots and everything only weighs like 5 pounds, and then you put 27 pounds of water in your backpack and off you go.
Now I know we're talking about the Guads, but things you mentioned about the water, Big Bend, the rangers will tell you there is no water in the backcountry.
Yeah.
But if you know what to look for, there is a lot of water. You look over there and you find a cottonwood tree, there is water right where that cottonwood. They have got to have a lot of water. You may have to dig down a little bit, but it's there. But the Guads, man, there ain't no cottonwood trees around the Guads. I don't remember having ever seen a cottonwood there.
The amazing thing about the
down
Guads,
at the spring, and that's it.
Yeah. The amazing thing about the Guads is when you're in the foothills, you're down low. It is typical flat West Texas desert and all the fauna you expect to see. And you climb, and then the soil turns red, and then it's like you're in Colorado.
Okay, I'm glad you reminded me of that because the first time I went up there, up to the bowl, was with Bill when we went up Bear Canyon. And so you leave the trailhead, and it's desert. I mean, it's rocks and it's cactus and it's desert. And you go up this Bear Canyon Trail, which is what you said, it was a mile long,
or any other trail,
or any other trail, but this one in particular, you go up it, and it's freaking desert. It's rocks and it's cactus, pretty much. And you get to the top, and you come over the ridge, and it's all you see in front of you is pine trees and grass.
Alpine, yeah.
And I can remember, and this was what, I don't know how many years ago it was we went up there. It's 30 years ago probably.
At least.
And I remember just standing there and just like, it was unbelievable.
Yeah.
You know, because it's like there's a line. On this side it's desert, and on that side it's forest. And I even looked over my shoulder. I'm like, this doesn't make sense to me.
You see all the pictures from the top. You can have this flat nothing desert through this frame of pine trees.
It is the weirdest thing. I can't. Really, you have to experience it to get it, because it was the strangest feeling that I've ever had, where you're just schlepping your way through this desert, and it's like you pop up and you're in this oasis, and you walk like 10 feet. And what's funny is like the transition area there. I can remember, because Bill went and sat down underneath a pine tree in the shade, and I remember right next to the pine tree was a yucca plant.
Yep.
It's like there's a cactus and a pine tree. This doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And it's amazing. Like I said, when you time it right, it starts getting really hot. You know, you leave in the morning, and about the time you're thinking, this is stupid, I'm going to die out here in the sun, you start getting into that cooler air.
Yeah.
And you go, okay, this is more what I was after.
Have either of you ever hiked McKittrick Canyon Trail during fall colors?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, probably 25, maybe 30 years ago, I hiked it several times over several years. And during the fall colors, if the weather is right, and sometime if it's been dry, they don't turn red and yellow, they turn brown and fall to the ground. But most of the time, it is very, very spectacular as far as Texas goes. It's or New Mexico. It's not like fall colors in the Northeast where you look out and it is a sea of red.
Yeah. But
it's spotty, but it's very spectacular.
McKittrick.
Anyway,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
McKittrick got very, very popular suddenly.
Yeah.
And I hiked it one year, and they were coming in by busloads.
Yep.
I parked probably half to 3/4 of a mile up the road from the parking lot to get in. And they had a park ranger about every 100 feet. Stay on the trail. Stay on the trail. Don't get off the trail. Stay on the trail. Now, a lot of these were seasonals. They weren't law enforcement rangers, but interpretive, whatever. But it was not enjoyable. The next year, I heard that they put a limit out on the highway of how many people could get in. When the parking lot got filled, they shut you off. And when one car came out, they'd let another one go in, because it was just miserable from all of the vehicular traffic, and the foot traffic was the same way. But it is truly nice. But I tell you what, the trail, the four-wheel drive that Cliff and I mentioned earlier, where we saw the guys, the city boys in this Suburban, we saw more colors on that trip than I'd ever seen in McKittrick Trail.
Yeah, that's the place to take your KLR, is up there to Lincoln National Forest.
I want to take it to the Williams Ranch Road too. That would be a cool one.
That would be great.
One of my favorite things to do, speaking of motorcycles, during the spring summer hours, is I can leave here, like I have my bike packed, ready to go, get off work 5 o'clock, and get on the bike, get down there and pitch a camp, and I'll put out my shortwave radio antenna and just, sit back, chill, and listen, and have a drink, and get up the next morning and hit like maybe the Devil's Hall Trail, which is unbelievable, McKittrick, or just the Foothills Trails, or Smith Springs, or Manzanita Springs. There's plenty of these little day hikes around there.
Yeah, that Devil's Hallway is nice.
Yeah, and when you're at the point you're just like, okay, that's enough, and I'm ready to go home, and you get on your bike and go home. there's a lot of good day trips out there, but if you really want to experience it, man, backpacking up the top is the way to go.
You know, Manzanita Spring, but that's 10-minute walk from where the headquarters used to be.
Yeah.
But it's a nice spring, and there was the plaque there. I cannot remember all of the numbers, but there was an Indian encampment there. And I do not remember the general's name that came in and routed the Indians. I want to say Crook, but I don't think that's right. But anyway, the plaque shows and lists the thousands of pounds of jerked meat, mule and buffalo, the thousands of blankets and saddles, and they burned this stuff because this was the Indians' winter supply.
Oh, wow.
And they
burned all their mescal.
That's right, mescal, prepared mescal. I forgot about that. And there are mescal pits here, there, and yonder around there. The campground up there that Cliff and I went to that time, if you'll hike a little road that goes down and overlooks, and I wish I could remember the name of that huge canyon, there's a mescal pit there that, if I remember right, it's about 30 yards in diameter. When they cooked mescal, they would have thousands of these agave heads that they cooked in this stuff. It's about a 3-day process. And it looks like a crater, but when I first saw it, I looked at that and I thought, what? And then I realized it's a mescal pit.
Wow.
Because the process, if I remember right, is they heat the ground with fire and then put the mescal in and cover it up with wet blankets and then rocks and stuff like that, and then let it simmer for about 3 days. And it softens those things up, and it's very, very sweet.
Well, I know.
And then they make tequila.
Then you make tequila.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that keeps the park from just getting overrun and being really crowded is there's absolutely nowhere to stay out there unless you're going to camp.
Right.
Just about.
And the only thing that's changed recently on the last Lost Airplane expedition we did, we stayed in Del City. There's a lady there whose family's from Del City, and she's bought up a bunch of properties and turned them into Airbnbs. So if you're into Airbnbs, there's some really cool little places in Del City. And it's not far from the Guads and Salt Flat and all that stuff. So there's a lot to be seen out there. And the thing is, be ready for it. Have good gear, good boots.
Some of these areas you have to look for, too.
Yeah.
Cliff and I were one of our forays up there. We were actually on top. And, that gravel road I was telling you about comes down and it dead ends, and then there are about 3 4-wheel drive roads that branch off of it. Well, we took one of them down. Were you and I together when we went over there and went down and found that spring down in the? I don't think so. That may have been Gary.
I don't think so.
There's another trail, another road that we went down as far as we could, and then got out and hiked. And the spring is on the maps, on the topos. And we hiked down this canyon, and man, there's a spring down there and wildlife.
Well, it's cool.
But it's kind of on the opposite side of that one. The time you and I went down all the way to the bottom into McKittrick.
Yeah. This is in Lincoln, right?
Yeah.
We were actually in Lincoln, yes.
Okay.
And then we messed around there and cached some water. I don't know if we could find that today, where that old blown-up dam was.
I thought we cached that water on that trip that we hiked up the canyon from McKittrick Canyon.
I only remember going down it and up it one time.
Yeah, right. We only did that once.
But that one trip where we went down and then we had to come back up.
Right, yeah. But that's not the time we left the water up there. That water is still up there. We should go find it.
I've looked on Google Earth trying to find it, and I've not been able to see that dam on Google Earth.
I don't remember a dam, so you're.
Well, it had been dynamited.
Yeah, you're thinking of something that I don't even remember.
Yeah,
so.
And speaking of which, McKittrick, he went up that canyon, up that McKittrick canyon through the creek bed in a Model T, from what I've read.
I saw some
and
pictures of that.
Those are some very high clearance vehicles.
Yeah.
And he's got Pratt Lodge up there, Hunting Lodge.
Yeah.
I think he lived up there.
Yeah, you can hike if you hike McKittrick. There's the Pratt Lodge and the Hunter Lodge, the original structures that are out there, and they're still maintained, and you can visit. And when it's open, you can go in Pratt Lodge.
Yeah,
they'll let you in and walk around.
One of the times Cliff and I were up there, it was a day hike. We went up into North McKittrick, and coming back, we stopped there at Pratt Lodge, and one of these female rangers was there, and we got to talking to her, and she said, "Well, where have y'all been?" "Well, we've been up at North McKittrick." "Oh, well, that's the part of the park that we don't recommend to people to go into."
Yeah.
And, Cliff said, I don't remember if you told her this or said it later, "Well, it's the most beautiful part of the park. Why would you not want people up into it?"
And they don't. The last time we went up there, the Park Service doesn't maintain that trail.
Right? Yeah.
And I think they've actually gone in and knocked some of the trail markers out because they really don't want people going up there.
There used to be at Pratt Lodge a bronze relief map of McKittrick and a few other canyon trails in that area. The last time I think you and I were there, that had been removed.
Yeah.
One of the things, there's it's is it Devil's Canyon? It's not Devil's Hallway, but Peregrine Falcon's Nest in there.
Oh, yeah.
There is a canyon off.
The Branch Canyon.
A branch is off of McKittrick, North McKittrick, that they have some falcon nesting up there, and they don't want anybody monkeying around up there.
That's 6 weeks out of the year it's closed.
Which, okay, I'm sure that some ornithologist is gonna comment about what a douchebag I am, but if peregrine falcons cannot tolerate people being around their nests, why are there peregrine falcons nesting in New York City? I don't quite understand what's happening here, other than the fact that I don't get to go up there in the park. That's the part that.
And they shut Big Bend down too. There's a couple of South Rim Trail.
Yeah.
If I remember right, is shut down during peregrine falcon.
Yeah. Well, we can't have people up here because the falcons don't like that. Really? Well, that's interesting because there's these freaking falcons. Falcons are everywhere.
Well, I sit and watch them eat dove from my office window. They seem to be doing pretty good.
Are they peregrine?
So yeah, they're peregrines downtown.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I would say if you're going to visit the Guads, if you want a day hike, drive to Pine Springs, and there's the Foothills Trail. You can actually go. Really cool one is around to El Capitan Trail, not all the way around, just like go out and see El Capitan and come back. There's Devil's Hall, which is gorgeous. It's an amazing geological chunk. Manzanita and Smith, and that's pretty much it for day hikes.
Well, you go to McKittrick Canyon, you can hike up to the grotto.
Yeah, the grotto
that's
at McKittrick.
That's a good day hike.
Yeah.
Now there's some other good day hikes too. They're not in the park. You can get into the park quite easy. Well, actually, the campground is in the park, but the road that I'd mentioned, the highway going through Queen, the Blacktop, if you go through Queen, past the turnoff to the South Rim Road,
you're way up there
down
by Dog Canyon.
And there's another road to the right, which is north, Guadalupe Ridge Road. And then it drops down, and the highway splits, and one section, I think, goes over to Del City.
Yeah.
I've never been down that. But there's a road to the left, and it goes up into Dog Canyon.
Yeah.
And the first time I went into Dog Canyon was in the summer or warmer months, and, man, it was hot. I was driving along here, and all of a sudden the temperature, you could watch the thermometer coming down as I got into Dog Canyon. I've camped there a few times with Gary and Jim on our birthday trip, and there's 3 or 4 trails in there, and I think you can ride horses. I think they've got some horses. I know they had a stable at one time, and you could take horse trips.
Well, if you can't find any place to go camp because every place is full, like, it's spring break or whatever, go to Dog Canyon.
Absolutely.
And I guarantee you there will be space at Dog Canyon because Dog Canyon is so far out of the way that nobody's there.
Yeah.
I was reading a forum about Guadalupe Mountains and some of these serious hikers, and they'll start at either Dog Canyon or Pine Springs, one of the two, and they'll start and they'll hike like the rim trail around Bush Mountain and go down and get more water at Pine Springs, get back up and go back to their car at Dog Canyon. I thought, no way, man.
Dude, we got
that's pretty hardcore. Yeah.
Well, we're probably all too old for that shit.
Yeah, but you can hike if you want a tough day hike. I mean, you can go up to the peak, or you can go up to Pine Top or Hunter Peak, and pretty much anything else you'd want to stay overnight.
Yeah.
Bill, didn't we that trip that we went up there that first time, and we went over to Hunter Peak? Didn't we see a mountain lion track in the mud in the middle of the trail? Because I seem to remember there was this beautiful track right in the mud, right in the middle of the trail. It was a big freaking cat track.
I don't remember it, Cliff. I'm not to say it didn't. I just don't
here's
remember
the reason I'm asking you is because this is the way. What I remember is I remember seeing this track, and I remember taking a picture of it.
Okay.
And I have looked and looked and looked, and I do not have a picture of a track. So either I dreamt it and it never happened, or I lost the picture and you don't remember, and I don't know. So
I
anyway.
definitely don't remember.
But there's mountain lions up there.
Oh, yes.
So it's totally possible.
Yes.
Maybe I dreamt it. I don't know.
When we came up on
It's a good dream.
It was fantastic.
Until you look around and see that cat sneaking up on you from the backside.
Yeah, after that, the deer sneaking up behind you is not near as much fun.
Yeah. I wonder if that's a mountain lion. No, it's probably that deer.
Well, when we saw the bear, you, me, and your son Austin.
Yeah.
And we were getting close to Bush Mountain, and we had been hiking all day. We had hiked up to a plane crash up there, and we were just miserable. And we hiked, and we came to a clearing, and I think I was out front, and I stopped, and I go, hey, there's a bear. And we look, and I remember thinking, I know that bear's going to run away, but on the 0.044% chance that he doesn't, what the hell am I going to do about it? Because there's a cliff behind us.
Yeah.
And then the rest of it's bare. And I thought, I wonder if I could make a spear out of my Swiss Army knife in time.
Your 14 walking sticks that you carry.
Yeah, and I had my two.
Yeah.
I have my my trek poles.
You said there's a cliff right behind you.
Yeah.
You wait till that bear's charging you, and then you just step aside and let him
take off my shirt and do the bullfighter thing.
That's a fantastic idea. But
but
neither
looks
one
good
of us
on paper.
Neither one of us thought of that at the time.
So we were looking at that bear, and I go, hey, Cliff, get a picture. And Cliff goes, huh? And I said, a picture. And he goes, I don't. And I go, your camera, dude, you're wearing. He goes, oh, yeah. We were all just kind of mesmerized with his bear. And he got a really good picture of it. So, and it was funny because the bear started walking toward us. And he had his head down, was looking for food. And then I guess saw us, smelled us, whatever. And he turned around and ran. And he was like, that's far enough. And stuck his head down again and came back toward us again.
Yeah.
Food.
And then finally took off, yeah.
You know what amazed me is when that bear took off, and that thing must have, I'm guessing 300 pounds.
That was a big bear, yeah.
It was a large.
A big black.
It was a large
pound,
animal.
That's a big black, yeah.
I mean, when I first saw him, I thought, because I could only see his rear end, because there was a tree in the way, I couldn't see his head. So I could only see the back half of the bear. I thought it was a horse. That'll give you some kind of idea of how big it was. And I thought, what's the horse doing up here? And I go, there's horse. I mean, I don't know. Maybe it got loose or whatever. And then I saw his head, and I go, that's not a horse. But that just his rump, it was about the size of a horse's ass. Okay, but when that sucker took off running, dead silence.
Not a sound.
I was amazed at that thing took off at 20 miles an hour, and you couldn't hear.
Wow.
You couldn't hear anything.
Disappeared in the tree line, and not a snap of a twig, man.
It was incredible.
I got to tell a funny story on Cliff.
Let's have it.
Only one?
Only one. This is going to take on one of our Civil Air Patrol forays up there. We went through Ligon Ranch, and he let us camp way back in there. And it's just a beautiful little area. If I had a house up there, that's where it'd be located. There were springs and big trees and desert all around us. We spent the night there. We were going to hike in to the plane crash on the ranch. On the park. And we had an ELT simulator. And we were in there. We hadn't gone very far, and for some reason, Cliff wanted that ELT simulator. It just transmits on that practice frequency. And he said, Bill, get it out of my pack. So I reached back there, and I'm fumbling around. I'm going through his pack. He said, it's right on top. And I fumbled around some more. I said, it's not there. Damn it, it's right on top.
It was right on top.
It's not there, Cliff.
It was right on top until it wasn't.
He takes that pack off and opens that thing up and starts going through that thing, and it's not there. And we backtracked, and we never did find that couple of $100 device.
Yeah, we can't find
even today. That thing is still, and everybody what you mentioned this to them, and they go, why didn't you turn on the direction finder and find the ELT? And you go, because the damn thing wasn't turned on. That's right. Why.
If we would have just turned it on before we dropped it, it would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we could have turned it on and let those guys track this moving ELT, but no, that wasn't the plan.
So, and I still feel horrible about that whole thing.
Well, yeah, because we lost this thing that belonged to Cap that was not cheap.
It was, I was carrying, I just had the little day pack.
Yeah.
And it was chock full of, food and water and, ponchos and whatever else kind of crap I was carrying. And I didn't have room to put this thing in the pack, so I kind of, I put it underneath the top flap and tightened the top flap down, and it looked secure, but apparently it wasn't.
There we go.
Because
and I wasn't always behind
out.
him. Sometime I was in the lead. We were hopscotching along there, and
one
it's
of those
somewhere laying
things,
up there.
One of those.
This
things,
is how we lose your tax dollars right here.
And so these kids, these Civil Air Patrol cadets that are expecting to use a direction finder to find this crashed airplane, well, they got disappointed because there was no direction finder there was no ELT at the airplane because I lost it on the way up there.
But they got there.
They did.
They found it. And that tells you something else about how rugged that country is. We started up the canyon, and we knew where it was. We'd had it pointed out to us. I don't think we had been there before.
I think we had. That was the second time we'd been up there.
Okay, it may have been.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going up there, and we're in the canyon, and we find a wheel of the landing gear off this. Was it Cessna 182?
So 172 or 182,
something like that. We got up there and we okay, here's a wheel. We're right where we belong. We're in the right canyon. We went some more, going uphill, busting brush, and we were probably within 20 yards of that plane crash. And there's stuff scattered everywhere before we saw it.
Oh yeah.
It was just
that
brush, of course. And I think that went in the early 60s.
Yeah, that one was 62, I think. 62, I have to look at my chart. But
Mike Murphy was on that the first trip into that thing.
Yeah, I've got the newspaper article and the...
but 62, 72, 82, 20 years.
Yeah.
And it had grown up around that thing.
Yep.
And of course, when that park ranger, we went up there on the Liggins place and went up on a hill, and he pulled out his spotting scope, and he said, see that little speck there? He said, that's what I call the white area. He said, that's what I call the catcher's glove. He said, that's what that plane flew straight into, scud running. And the tail section was sticking up.
Mm-hmm.
He pulled it up on the spotting scope. We could see, I believe it was red.
Yeah.
Could see that tail section.
It was red and white, wasn't it?
Red and white, that's right.
When you're looking on Google Earth for the plane crashes, you can go back over the historical images, and every once in a while you'll see a glint off the satellite.
One of the trips we went up there, second, third, I don't remember. It wasn't there anymore.
Yeah, it had blown down.
There'd
washed
been a
down.
storm or something, and it blown that tail over. So
the older ones are washed into canyons. The one that crashed on the south side of that hit the face of El Capitan, that thing just gets lower and lower every year. The last time I was up there, it was completely in a different spot.
Okay.
But
Well,
I've never been to that one.
I will tell you that first trip that we took up there that you set up with Mr. Ligon, and we took all those cadets up there. And that was if you guys remember, that was a cadet search and rescue
that's
exercise.
the one I was on, yeah.
So when I say it was a cadet exercise, that means the cadets, the kids, ran the whole mission. That the only thing that us adults were there to do was just to kind of supervise, but make sure you guys didn't get in any trouble. But you guys ran that mission, and I want you to know that was one of the few trips that literally changed my life.
Oh yeah.
And the way it happened, a couple of guys that you need to get in here. Bags was the mission coordinator.
Yep.
He was back at the campsite. He wasn't out there in the field. And we had the guy that was running the field part of it was Spencer. You need to get him back in here. And at one point, they're using the direction finder, and they're going over these hills, and they're trying to find this crashed airplane. And Bags calls Spencer on the radio, and he says, "What is your location?" And I will never forget that till the day I die. This was literally the moment that my life changed, was watching Spencer looked at that radio like the answer was written on the radio, and it wasn't. and then he looked up, and he looked around, and I knew immediately what his problem was. He knew where he was, but how do you tell somebody else where you are?
That's yes.
And it changed my life. And I have, how many years after that have I spent mapping the city of Midland? Because if you can't tell somebody else where you are, it doesn't do any good.
That's right.
To know where you are.
And the landmarks around there, if you walk 100 feet in any direction, they change.
Yeah.
The perspective changes drastically.
Exactly. And so I spent, how much time after that you and me spent learning, and you too, Bill, learning how to read a map and how to read a compass, how to use a compass, and how to translate this into something that you could tell somebody else, okay? Because again, if you can't tell somebody else where you are, it doesn't help any to know where you are.
And the hardest part, as you and I found that time, we sat up there for about half an hour with the topo trying to figure out.
Or a whole hour.
It may have been an hour, but you've got this topo that's maybe 3 feet by 2 feet, and the scale is not the same scale as when you look up.
Yeah.
No.
And we saw a little crooked or curve in the creek bed, and we were able to start gaining a perspective. And for orienteering, that is, in the mountains especially, is extremely difficult until you've done it and can get your mind set to where you can go from here to here, and you're looking at now several miles.
Right.
It's an art.
It's
got to be developed.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It takes practice.
It takes a lot of practice.
From the perspective of the guy that ran the ELT on that mission, I can tell you, I turned it on and I went for the target, and that's all it was like a scent dog. Roof, roof, roof.
Well,
and I knew where I had been. I roughly knew the bearing back, and that was it.
And you know what? You followed that direction finder religiously and took us through the biggest patch of cat claw I've ever been through
back
in my
and
life.
forth because I was chasing the signal reflections. But we're going to get into airplanes in another episode. But
there was. Yeah,
I didn't know what cat claw was until you showed me with that damn direction finder.
Yeah, it cost me a new set of boots. So yeah, if you go to Guads, know what cat claw looks like and stay on the trails. And folks, we're up against an hour, and I think that covers kind of what I want to talk about, just sort of the Guads in general. We're going to push into the plane crashes and stuff in some other episodes, but if you go out there, just, man, Boy Scout / Coast Guard motto, be prepared, be ready, because it is a monster. And above all else, have fun. You may want to die, but you're not going to if you take care of yourself.
You may think you're going to.
Yeah,
or
it's
like
pretty rough.
when I was in that cat claw, I was about to curse God because there were times I couldn't move forward.
Yeah, it'll just chew the skin off your bones. And, yeah. Well, fantastic, gentlemen.
Thank God
Enjoyed
we got
it
to
much?
talk about cat claw.
Yeah, you can't talk about the Guads without that. Cheers, guys.